it starts by importing the even or odd Lambda layer as EO. Inside the Lambda handler, just like before, on line 4, I'm extracting the num key value from event in a num variable. Consider this. You want to create an AWS Lambda layer so you can separate core function logic from dependencies. Can you do this using the Lambda console? Let's find out. Let's start by navigating to the Lambda service, then click on Create Function and give it a name. Choose Python 3.11 from the runtime dropdown, then hit Create Function and scroll down to the code source section. Here, I'm going to copy paste pre-written Python code that starts by extracting the num key from our event and then stores the value in the num variable. On line 5, I'm checking if num is divisible by 2 or not. If it is, then I'm setting the output to even, else I'm setting the output to odd. Finally, on line 10, I'm returning the value of the output. Next, hit deploy to deploy your changes, then click on test to configure your test event. Give your test event a name, and then in the event JSON, let's give our num key a value of 5, then hit save. Click on test again to invoke your Lambda function and confirm that you see a response of odd, since 5 is an odd number. Let's try one more test where we change the num to 6 and see if the response changes to even. Next, let's extract this even or odd logic into its own Lambda layer so we can use it across multiple Lambda functions. I'm calling this method even or odd and it accepts num parameter. Starting line 4, I'm checking if num is divisible by 2 or not, and finally on line 9, I'm returning the output. Note, I'm saving this even or odd.py file under the Python directory. Why? Because if you look at this AWS documentation, it says that's how you structure your folders for a Lambda layer archive. Right-click on the Python folder, then click on Compress Python to create a python.zip file. Next, head to the Lambda service, then click on Layers in the left toolbar, then hit Create Layer. Give your layer a name, then select the python.zip file that we just created. Then select Compatible Architectures and Runtimes. Hit Create, then navigate back to the original Lambda function tab. If you scroll up to the function overview section, it will show that you currently have 0 layers. Click on the layers icon, then click on add a layer. Choose custom layers, select even or odd layer that we just created with version 1, then hit add. Confirm that you see the layer count change to 1, then scroll back to the code source section. Let's update our Lambda function, and this time it starts by importing the even or odd Lambda layer as EO. Inside the Lambda handler, just like before, on line 4, I'm extracting the num key value from event in a num variable. However, on line 5, instead of writing the if or else logic, I'm just calling the eo.even or odd method and passing the num parameter to it. Finally, I'm capturing the output and returning it as part of the return statement. Click on Deploy to deploy your code changes, then configure the test event. I'm going to change the num value to 3, then hit save, then click on Test to execute your Lambda function. Looks like our function is working as expected. Let's do one more test where we change the num to 4 and see if the response changes to even. There you have it. But before you go, here's a question for you. Why don't AWS Lambda functions ever get invited to parties?